If you're currently in the market to buy a brand new road bike at the top end, well, you're probably going to be presented with two choices, one aerodynamic model and one lightweight climbers model.
Now, Dan and I have spent quite a bit of time racing and riding different bikes from different manufacturers over the years, but today we're going to be riding one of each and hopefully doing a direct comparison. Firstly, we'll take them for a bit of a spin and then we're going to put them to the test against the clock. It's going to be deeply scientific, of course, and then hopefully we'll get some numbers.
Ready?
Let's do it. Right, Dan, before we get to the issue of out-and-out speed, what about general climbing? What's your perception of aero bikes versus light bikes?
I think even these days, there are quite a few riders who just like the feel of certain things. It doesn't matter how much data they get from their teams and suppliers, they'll just go with what their head says.
Because at the end of the day, there are certain aero bikes that can meet the UCI weight limit of 6.8 kilos. So, but for the consumer, obviously, you can go significantly lighter with a light bike if you've got the money. And at that point, you've got to say, well, a light bike does climb better, especially with lightweight wheels over deep sections.
Yeah, but I think you're right. As all the bikes come down towards that 6.8 kilogram mark, I think more and more riders are starting to truly take on and believe the science now of aerodynamics. And if you're all on the same weight bike, you might as well be more aero as well.
But the fact is though, if your average speed when you get home from a normal ride on a Sunday is 26k an hour, actually you're not really going to see any benefits from riding an aero bike except for one or two exceptions on your ride, are you? But let's talk a bit about comfort as well, because aero bikes have always had a bit of a rap for being slightly harsher than a lightweight bike. I mean, they're also, ironically enough, flexier generally, aren't they? Because they're narrower in their frontal profile, so they don't get that kind of torsional rigidity.
But certainly I had a misconception really when I first got onto deep section wheels. You look at these things and you think they look incredibly stiff, and actually when you get on them and out of the saddle, the side-to-side flex of these deep section wheels is quite significant compared to a normal box section, even training rim. So sometimes you have to kind of slacken the brakes off so that you don't get brake drag on the way up the climbs.
And now for the test. Dan and I did timed runs of 10 minutes on the same stretch of road. We each rode it twice, once on each bike. We kept our positions the same and held 300 watts for both runs. Any change in distance, therefore, could loosely be attributed to the different bikes. Of course, we know it's riddled with errors, but our thinking was that if you're going to invest in an aero bike, wouldn't you want to see the difference on the road? Right, we're back at GCN HQ and have crunched through all our data. Now, Dan and I have broadly similar results, which is reassuring in this robust and scientific test. Now, the difference was 1.5% in favour of the aero bike, and that came as a result of riding an extra 110 metres in that 10-minute time trial, or if you'd rather it, riding 0.4 kilometres per hour faster.
Now that might not sound earth-shattering, but if we extend that out to a 40-kilometre time trial, then the difference is going to be almost or around about a full minute. And if you ride over 300 watts, that difference will be greater. And likewise, if you haven't got quite so much power, the difference will be less.
That's pretty much what you'd expect to see then, which is a relief. But it's not quite as simple as that. Firstly, not all aero bikes are actually aero. One look at one of VeloNews' annual aero bike tests will show you that that's exactly the case. And secondly, what Dan's just said, if you ride at lower powers and speeds, your aero bike is not going to have the same advantages for you.
So, probably not worth Matt Stevens buying an aerodynamic bike, for example?
No, probably not.
Great for us. So, in conclusion, quite predictably, the aerodynamic bike was that little bit faster. And comparatively, if you go for the lightweight bike, you're unlikely to see similar performance gains unless you live in a particularly mountainous area. The logical choice then surely is to go for the aerodynamic bike if you want to maximise that performance gain. And I guess that probably is the case if you're an experienced, powerful rider who races regularly, dabbles in the odd local time trial, or even likes to just rip the legs off his friends in the local bunch ride.
In most instances though, an aerodynamic bike is less comfortable to ride than a lightweight bike, and that's because the tube shapes are tailored specifically for aerodynamics and not for vibration damping and comfort. And because of the heavier deep section wheels, the bike is going to feel slightly more sluggish when accelerating and when climbing. And finally, in order to get that low aerodynamic body position, the head tubes tend to be quite short. And that means that some riders are going to struggle to actually fit one.
So if there is such a thing, an average rider might not think that these trade-offs are really worth it to go for the aerodynamic bike. And let's not forget that the frame itself is quite far down the pecking order when it comes to aerodynamics.
That's right. In terms of reducing your drag coefficient, things like your body position certainly are at the top, followed by your clothing, your helmet, your wheels, and then your frame. At the end of the day then, an aero bike sounds like something of a niche product, but it's still not as simple as that. Your perception of the bike is in fact the most important thing of all. If you're spending your own money on it, if you're spending hours of your own time riding it, then you have to like the bike. The feeling that you've got the right tool for the job is worth far more than 0.4 kilometers per hour ever could.
Exactly, you've got to go into your garage, like the look of it, and want to go out training. At the end of the day, who are we to tell you which type of bike looks cooler? Although, to be fair, I think that the aero bike does look cooler.
I think lightweight bikes look cooler, but with deep section wheels.
Like a cycling equivalent of cross-dressing.
Whoa, f***ing hell, this is the wrong one.
That was a bit low.
Did you get that? To quickly get to all GCN's how-to videos, click on me.
And to subscribe, click on the face of experience.